Hey, good afternoon, everybody. If you would, if you're on here with me, please just shoot me over a message real quick and let me know that you can hear me. Just do a quick sound test real quick. And I just want to mention a couple things as we're getting started here. First of all, we are live coming from my house here. So I do have a dog. She's a good guard dog. So if somebody barks on the door or something like that, she is going to bark, and I may have to go deal with that for a second. So if I disappear after you hear the dog barking or something like that, I'll have to. I'll be right back as soon as I can. Thanks everybody for letting me know. And the other thing is that I'm only going to be answering questions that are asked during the office hours. So I noticed there was a lot of questions that were posted before we got started. I'm only going to be answering questions that are asked during, and that's just to make sure that those who are here are actually getting their questions answered and sticking around to see the questions being answered. So I'm going to go down to, basically right before I started talking about things. I'm going to go with Fred P. So if you posted a question before Fred P's question about tee shots killing his game, then you're going to want to just post your question again if you're still here, and then I'll get to it as we move through the questions. So let's go ahead and get started here. There's one other thing I wanted to mention. There's going to be a lot of questions probably that are going to be covered by a video in depth on the website. So if it's a question that isn't covered on the website, I'm going to take the time to answer your question and make sure that you have the answer for it. But if there's a video on the website that answers your question entirely, then I'm gonna point you in the direction of that video. It doesn't mean I don't want to answer your question. It just means that I want to be able to answer as many questions as I can. And if there's a question that's already answered in a video, then I'll go ahead and shoot you over to that, and you'll be able to get your question answered. So let's go ahead and start with Fred P here. And he says that his tee shots are killing his game. I'm either pull hooking or popping up to the right. I know you can't see my swing, but any suggestions? So what I would say is look at your spine angles. I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing. It's really the biggest key to consistency. Most likely your spine angles are kind of moving all over the place. So you want to make sure that you're nice and angled away, and then at address. And then as you go to the top, you want to be angled away from the target, nice and stable. You may be going like this, like kind of leaning toward the target as you're going up to the top. And that can cause you to kind of come over the top, and that's where the pull hooks can come in from. That can cause you to kind of swing down steeply into the ball and get the club working underneath and causing the pop-ups. So a lot of that is just being nice and stable with the spine throughout the swing. That's going to lead to a lot more consistency. So I look at that. Excuse me. Excuse me. But you're exactly right. In order for me to know for sure, I'd really have to look at your swing. Your spine angles may be good, and it may be something else that's causing the issues. But that's the most common thing is I'd be looking at your spine angles. So that's going to be working through the stable and fluid spine section and making sure you're hitting all the keys there. To get to the courses on the website, the best way to get to them is to go to the top of the page, click the house icon. That's going to bring you to the home page. And then if you scroll down, there'll be a list of all the courses on the website. It's one of the first ones, that stable and fluid spine. You're going to want to make sure, look at your swing on video, see if you're, draw the lines on there and make sure that you're hitting all those key pieces that we talk about. And that's going to help you be a lot more consistent for sure. But if you'd like me to take a look at your swing and be able to really nail down what that is, then you're going to want to sign up for my Unlimited Swing Review program. I believe right now I am all full up. I have a full student load right now. But spots do become available sometimes. Sometimes students, I just had a student who's moving and he's just not going to have time to do the swing reviews for a while. So he ended up canceling. And then I sent out an email to a couple people that joined my waiting list, letting them know that a spot's available. And then somebody signed up right away. So get on that waiting list. And then as soon as if I have a spot available, I'll shoot out an email to whoever's on that waiting list, and they'll be able to it's first come, first serve. So just be able to sign up right away. We do have other instructors. Robin, I believe, has some spots available, and Tommy, I'm not sure if he has spots available right now, but I think he does. They're both available as well. So if you want to get your swing looked at by a top speed golf instructor, you'll want to sign up for the swing reviews. If you want to check out the swing review program, not sure what it is, and want to go check it out, at the top of the page there's a link that says "Get a Review." It's got all the information about the Unlimited Swing Review program that you can take a look at, and it's where you can sign up and all that good stuff. So check that out as well. So let's keep on moving forward here. All right. So Alan B says, I'm achieving a launch angle of around 18 degrees with my 5-iron, 26-degree loft angle. So I assume I have forward shaft lean at impact, but still find myself unable to take a divot. All of my practice is from artificial grass at a driving range, and I have noticed that my impact is generally fairly low on the club. Do you think the use of the range maybe cause my inability, as there is no give below? So not necessarily. So what's happening is, so first of all, let's go into what causes the ball to launch the way that it does. So it's going to be somewhere in between your dynamic loft, or actually your dynamic loft is going to be somewhere in between your launch angle and where your angle of attack is. It's about 80% of what your launch angle is. So for instance, if we have, hopefully y'all can see this, but essentially, hopefully this is riding good today. Hasn't been riding good in the past. There, I think that's good now. So if this is your horizon, okay, this is the turf, and you have the golf ball right here. So hopefully y'all can see that. Yeah, you can see that. All right, so essentially your club is coming down and you're hitting down on the ball, right? So let's say this is your angle of attack. So that's the up and down movement of the club head. Let's say that that's moving down into the ball. Let's say that this is 5 degrees. So this angle here is 5 degrees. So if that is 5 degrees, and let's say your launch angle, your ball is launching. So this is, the ball is launching up in the air at, let's say that this angle is 20 degrees. Just to make the math easy, we'll say that this is 20 degrees. So your forward shaft lean, which is often referred to as dynamic loft, that's going to be in between those. And it's going to be 80% in the direction of your launch angle. So if your launch angle is 20 degrees and your attack angle is -5 degrees, it's 5 degrees down, you have a 25-degree difference between these two. So that's a 25-degree difference. If you take 80% of that, that's 20 degrees. So 80, if you multiply that by 0.8, now you have 20 degrees. Sorry, this isn't working very good, but hopefully you can kind of see that. But 20 degrees. So that means that your dynamic loft in this case would be 20 degrees up from here. So it'd actually be, in relationship to the horizon, it would be about 15 degrees. So that'd be your club face, your dynamic loft, that's your forward shaft lean, is going to be 15 degrees. So and this is not riding very good, I apologize for that, but hopefully you can kind of see that. But essentially what I'm saying is that's the loft that you're presenting to the golf ball at impact. So that's what would be your forward shaft lean. So don't always look at your launch angle and think that that's what your forward shaft lean is, or what the loft that you're creating to the ball, that you're presenting to the ball, because that's not really the case. Your attack angle plays a big role in that. It's a smaller role than the launch angle, but it does play a role. So if you're hitting, let's say in this case, I was hitting 15 degrees down on the ball. Well, now that would make my dynamic loft that I'm presenting to the ball a lot less, and my launch would also come out way, way lower. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these things, that's what's going on, is it's about 80%. If you can kind of think of it in a way that if your launch angle is this, if you think about 80% of that is going to be about your dynamic loft, that's if you have zero angle of attack. So I'd always take a little bit off of there to get what your actual forward shaft lean is. But the ball coming out low, the ball is always going to come out lower if it's struck lower on the face. So you always got to think about that, as well as that will change. That's due to gearing. That ball will launch lower than expected as well. This is assuming center face contact. So if you get a ball that's struck on the lower part of the face, that's actually going to be due to gearing. It's going to come out a lot lower, and it's actually going to have a lot more spin on it as well. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these things. A strike is a big deal. But I would say, a lot of the reason why people do flip the club and add loft to the face is because they are a little bit of afraid of the give underneath. They're afraid of hitting the ground as they're coming through impact. So you kind of have to get over that fear a little bit and really try to get down and get some forward shaft lean with it. I'd be looking at your swing on video. I mean, the camera doesn't lie. You got to look at the swing on video, see where you're releasing the club. We talk about in the straight line release section that we want to be releasing this club about 45 degrees out in front. And what that means is, as you're coming in and you're releasing all these angles, let me angle this down a little bit. As you're coming into impact, you have some forward shaft lean, and then the club releases out in front. So ideally, if you're looking from face on, that would be about a 45-degree angle between the club and the horizon. And that usually means that you're creating the right amount of forward shaft lean. Because if I'm coming in here, I'm like this, I have good forward shaft lean. This is about where you'll see a lot of tour players, their hands kind of in this position, right in front of the leg here. That's a pretty solid amount of forward shaft lean there. It's about right where you want to be. And then you'll see they release the club right here. Now, if you come into impact and you see your release is right here, which is what we typically see in amateur players, is that's just in front of impact. Well, that means that at impact, you probably had zero to little forward shaft lean. You may have even had backward shaft lean. You may have even seen the club releasing right at the ball. So in order to get some forward shaft lean, you got to get that club releasing out in front. So that's what I would be working on to get some forward shaft lean. But I wouldn't always pay attention too much to your launch numbers, the launch angle numbers, because that can be gear effect can have an effect on that. If you're hitting it lower on the face, it's going to come out lower. But your dynamic loft, if you have a machine that will tell you what the dynamic loft is, unfortunately, that's not really available unless you're paying, thousands and thousands of dollars for like a TrackMan or a Flight Scope or a GC Quad or something like that. But if you have access to those kinds of numbers, access to that kind of machine, you own one, it can tell you that kind of numbers, but you don't need that. If you kind of just know that center face strike, that means, if you're looking at just think about the dead center of the face. That's what these numbers are based off, that 80% number. But if you're hitting it lower on the face, that it's going to come out lower. That launch angle is going to be driven lower, and it's going to be determined a little bit less by what the launch angle is. So hopefully that makes sense a little bit. But yeah, if you're wanting to work on getting some forward shaft lean, I'd be looking at are you generating lag in the downswing? If you're releasing the club from the top, meaning if at the top of the swing you look at this angle that I have and you're throwing it away right from the top of the swing, if you're doing that, it's going to be near impossible to release that club out in front. You're almost always going to release it at the golf ball. If you are releasing it out in front, you're doing it with very, very little speed. It's just hard to get speed when you're doing that. What you want to do is you want to come down, have this angle, and then generate lag. So this angle gets sharper. And then from about right here, when this lead arm is parallel to the ground, that's about when you want to start having that club releasing out in front. So you want to make sure that you're getting some lag. If you aren't getting much of a backswing, if you're having a really, really short backswing, you feel like you have to rush the downswing, that's also going to be really difficult to make the club release out in front. If you're getting right here and you're just trying with everything you got because you're just trying to release the club so quickly, you're typically going to release it really, really early when you do that. And then I would also look at the move. So I'd make sure that you're shallowing out the club, which is what we talked about in the move section. So that's turning the doorknob to the right. So that's what this is right here, getting that butt into the club to be pointing down at the golf ball or a little bit outside of the golf ball. So shallowing that club out and then squaring that club face earlier, that's going to allow you to rotate into impact, and that's going to help you to release that club out in front. So I look at those two pieces. That's the move section. Again, to get all the courses, click the house icon, scroll down, get to those. And then the last piece is just that straight line release section, like figuring out how that club or how the hands are releasing the club to the ball. So the pet the grass drill, that's all really, really good for getting that release out in front. So I'd look at those pieces. But yeah, that, it could be a little bit that you're afraid to hit into the ground because there's not a lot of give underneath the mat. That's a perfectly, in a perfect world, we would all hit off of turf all the time. But, a lot of driving ranges, especially these days, are going to, no turf or anything. It's always hitting off of mats, unfortunately. So you just have to keep these things in mind when you're practicing. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. Michael S. says, film my backswing and notice I am flat. How much of an issue is it to be under the intended plane on the backswing? So what really happens is the only reason why a backswing would be an issue is if it causes you to do something in the downswing that changes your impact. If you look at almost all tour players, from the top of the swing into impact, they're all very, very similar. The club path, the hands, the way everything kind of sequences and works, they're all very, very similar. What you see that's very, very different in a lot of tour players is how the club gets up here. You see a lot of tour players, they bring it way inside. Look at J.B. Holmes. He brings it way inside. You look at Ricky Fowler or Jason Day, it's more outside of the hands. You look at an Adam Scott, Rory McIlroy, it's pretty much right in line with the hands as they're going up to the top. So what's happening is that when you bring it outside the hands, inside the hands, in line with the hands, you're creating momentum going in a direction. So if you're going way, way inside, the reason why you hear a lot of people say, don't bring the club way, way inside is because what's happening in the downswing is you're creating momentum. So in the backswing, you're going this way, and then in the downswing, you're creating momentum to go this way, which is the opposite of what you want to do. That's an over-the-top swing that you want to shallow the club, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to come over the top. It just means that you have momentum moving in that direction. If you look at J.B. Holmes, brings the club way inside and then shallows it on the downswing. Even though he has kind of momentum moving in that direction, he shallows the club in the downswing. And this is likely why guys like Ricky Fowler, Jason Day, they're bringing the club outside of the hands to basically allow the physics to be in their favor to make it easier to shallow out the club in the downswing. So I would look at, are you shallowing out the club in the downswing? And if you are, and you're bringing the club inside, then that's completely fine. Now, if you're bringing it in really, really flat, the only other thing about that is if you're bringing it in really, really flat like this, you're not elevating your arms very much. So it's going to be hard to get power from that. So in order to get the hands higher, if you get the hands higher, you're going to have more space and time to accelerate that club and create speed. So you may want to feel like you're lifting up a little bit. If you're really, really struggling with distance and power, that can be a part of the reason why, is because you're bringing the club way, way back too flat. So if you're bringing the club way, way back too flat and then swinging over the top, that's really bad there, because you're going to end up with no power and, you're going to be swinging over the top. So not only are you not going to be compressing the ball very much because you're not going to have much speed, but you're also going to be swinging across the ball and giving it a glancing blow. And you're just not going to have much distance and speed from that. You're always going to be struggling with distance. So to get rid of that, I would kind of feel like there's actually a drill on the website. I think it's actually a drill that Robin has on the website where he takes a club. Let me angle this down a little bit so you can kind of see my feet. But basically, if I were to drop this club down and have this kind of angled out like that and have this right by my front foot, so my toe line is right here, I would feel like as I'm going up, well, now I'm trying, the club is outside of my hands here. I'm trying to get this club more outside my hands. I'm lifting the club up more, getting this club to work more outside of my hands. And then that makes it easier to shallow out, and also makes it easier for me to get my hands higher as I'm going up, because I'm not swinging so much to the inside. So that club is angled out like this. So it's angled out. Here's my toe line right here, and I have it angled out right here. And I bring it up to about halfway up, and I try to match it with that. So it's almost like if I drop this club right now, it would land right on top of that. So you pause right there, then you go up to the top. And then I would just do some slow fluid practice swings where you're kind of replicating that same motion, doing that. And that should help out quite a bit with getting that club to work more outside the hands. But I would only change that or work on that if you're seeing that you're not getting your arms elevated. And two, if you are swinging over the top in the downswing. Either one of those, it might be worth changing that backswing a little bit. But if you're not, then you're basically, if you're getting the hands elevated and you're not swinging over the top, even though you're bringing the club inside, just like what JB Holmes does, then it would just be a waste of time for you to work on that, because it's not really going to do anything for you, if that makes sense. So I would be taking the time to work on things that you know are going to help you the most. And for the most part, that's just going to be the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system and working through those. All right. So William R. says, I can't stop releasing my hands too early. Any tips? So it's going to be, we already kind of went over that essentially, but that's going to be first, make sure that you're generating lag in the downswing. Just to go over again. So generating lag in the downswing, you're doing the move, you're shallowing out the club, squaring up the club face earlier, and you're releasing the club to the with the hands properly, and that's going to be the straight line release section. So I'll be looking at your swing on video, seeing what's going on with all of those. To pinpoint exactly what that'd be for you, I'd have to see your swing and know, to be able to know for sure. And you'd want to sign up for an unlimited swing review program to do that. Join my waiting list. If I believe I am full right now, so join my waiting list if you need me to take a look. Kim M says, I've been trying to keep my back to the target as I turn my hips through. I feel that I hold the lag, delaying the hit. I am hitting down instead of sweeping the ball. I am approaching the shot correctly. So this is something that I get asked a lot. People always talk about holding the lag. You're not holding the lag. You're never holding on to the lag. You're generating the lag, and then you're releasing it as quickly as possible. So what that means is, as you're coming down, you're generating it, and then you're reaching a point to where you're starting to release it. You're not getting right here and then holding, and then releasing it, or, because that, in that case, you might be chopping down into the ball. So it's generating. So that's, I'm tightening this angle here, and then I'm releasing out in front. I know it looks like, if you look at a tour player's swing, it looks like they're holding on to it. And the reason why it looks that way is that when it's starting to release, it's releasing very, very slowly. So when they're usually generating lag to about this point in the downswing. So that's about when the lead arm is parallel to the ground. We call this the max lag position. That's when they're getting that lead arm and the shaft is creating the sharpest angle there in the downswing. That's when you're seeing that max lag position. And then from there, it's starting to release, but it's releasing very, very shortly. If you go to right here with the tour player, lead arm parallel to the ground, and then go 2 frames forward, you're not going to see the club at the same angle. It's going to be kind of like that. It's going to be releasing slowly. And then as they're getting closer to impact, it starts to release faster and faster and faster. But that's why in the beginning, it looks like they're holding on to it, but they're not. They're generating it, and then they're releasing it as quickly as possible. So that feeling that you're having is probably most likely not the right feeling. But that being said, everyone has different feelings. Everyone feels different things. If you find that holding on to it actually creates a generation of lag and then release, then that's the right feeling for you to have. But that in reality, that's not what you want to be having. You don't want to be generating lag, holding on to it, and then releasing it. You want to be generating lag and then releasing it. So I look at your swing on camera and see what's going on there. Because the camera's not going to lie. What you feel is often not real. I think we've all heard that before. Feel is not real. Most of the time it's not. What you feel is actually happening is usually not real. I've had tons of students who signed up for my swing reviews. They've never filmed their swing before. And then they sent me their swings and they didn't realize all the stuff that they were doing. They had no idea that this was going on because it felt like something else was going on. So you got to film your swing. That's really one of the best tools that we have from working on our technique, because what you see on camera doesn't lie to you. It's going to tell you exactly what's going on, but you can't always rely on what you feel being correct, because it's usually not correct. It's usually incorrect. So I definitely be taking a look on your camera and see what's happening with the feeling that you're having. And then a lot of what golf is, it's just adjusting your feeling to get the desired result that you want. So maybe feeling like, you're getting that hold, basically you're getting that generation and then the release right away, but it's happening too soon. Maybe you're generating and it's starting to release from right here. So I just try to feel like you're generating longer and then releasing the club later. That's what I would try to feel like to get to where you want to be. It just depends on what you're seeing on camera. And again, it's hard for me to know exactly what's going on without seeing your swing. but that's the feeling that you want to have, is that you're generating lag is, as much as you can, and then releasing it as hard as you can. Tim L says the greens on the course most of us play vary in speed between each hole. Are there tricks for assessing likely speed visually? I assume that they're using the same. I mean, I guess if you have a course that cuts it with different mowers on every hole, usually the low budget courses, that would have they would have just one green mower typically. So it's surprising to me that they would be cut at different speeds. And then your higher end courses might that have maybe a little bit more money, maybe have a couple different mowers and mow greens with different mowers, and they might be slightly different heights. But I would say that's not something that I've ever run into, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that I agree with that statement that greens vary from speed to speed from hole to hole. I think that's, now I will say, the grain can make a difference in how much the speed. So it might be, I'm guessing what's happening with you, because I can almost guarantee you they're not cutting them at different heights and they're not different speeds. I think the direction that you hit on a hole is going to determine kind of the grain. So if you're hitting into the grain, it can be slower, and if you're hitting with the grain, it's going to be faster. So I imagine that's what you're running into, is that it's a grain issue. So the way to find out, if I would go to look at the hole, and I would see where the grass is going into. So you're going to see where some of it, the grass is kind of coming out over the hole a little bit slightly. And then on the other side of the hole, it will seem like the grass is kind of growing away from the hole a little bit. So that will determine which way the grain is going. And then you can see which direction the grain is growing. And then you can determine if this is going to be a little bit faster, if it's going to be a little bit slower, or maybe it's going to have a little bit of more break going in this direction. Because the faster the green is, the more, if the grain's going in this direction and you have a right to left putt, that putt might break a little bit more than what it looks. And then vice versa. If you're putting and it's breaking into the grain, it may not break as much as you think it will. This effect is more prominent in some courses than others. I know a lot of Florida courses. I'm not familiar with all the grasses and stuff, but I know that there's certain grasses where the grain plays a much bigger role versus, there's some grasses where the grain doesn't play much of a difference at all. So I'm not sure where you're playing, but I know in Florida the grain is a bigger deal. And when I've come down here to play, I've kind of had to adjust to it. Played most of my golf in the Midwest in the United States. And where most of the greens that I played, grain doesn't really play any part, at least in the ones that I played anyway. But in Florida, with the greens, I can't remember what the primary grass is that they use for the greens here, but that seems to have a much bigger effect on that. So it's mostly grain that you're probably dealing with. All right, so let's go on to the next one. All right, so Mauricio says, sometimes I hook big time in spite of coming down from the inside. Can it be caused by a lack of hip rotation? So what we need to think about, what we always need to be thinking about is ball flight. It's always caused by something that's happening at impact. I would try to never think about that it's necessarily happening because your hips aren't doing something or because your head is doing this or things like that. I would always try to think about what's happening at impact first. So a hook is going to be a shot that curves to the left. That's what I always deem it as. It's a shot that it starts in a certain direction and it goes to the left. Assuming you're right-handed, it's going to hook like that. So that's always caused by a club face that is closed to the club path. So if you're actually swinging a lot from in to out, that's a club path, right? That's moving in to out. If your face is square at impact and your club path is moving in to out a lot, that's going to cause a hook. So if you're hitting a hook and that ball is starting out straight, I would actually try to feel like you're swinging over the top a little bit. And if you get the ball to start left and hook, then that means that your path is right, but now your face is too far closed. So I would try to feel like you're swinging over the top with more of an open face. The best way to fix any sort of swing fault or ball flight issue is to exaggerate the opposite. So if you're having a hard time with hooks, then I would try to hit a slice. And then once you get to where you're hitting a slice, all you have to do is ease off of that feeling. I don't know if you, I've gotten this question a little bit in the past about Matt Kuchar. If you ever watched Matt Kuchar do a pre-shot routine, he always does this swing where he's swinging. I mean, it looks like he's just swinging way over the top. Well, Matt Kuchar, previously in his career, really struggled hooking the ball. I mean, he hooked the ball like crazy. So basically, he vowed he's never going to hook or draw a ball ever again. So he learned how to hit some big old slices, and now he has this pre-shot routine where basically he takes a slice swing in his pre-shot routine, and it helps him understand what he's trying to do with his body. So I would try to be feeling like you're hitting some big old slices, and that will most likely straighten it out. But I would actually try to get to where you're hitting big old slices and then just ease off of that feeling. And we do have a hook section. I would go to our Never Hook Again section, click on the house icon, scroll down to the courses, go to our Never Hook Again section, and check out those videos. And we'll get that hook out of there. It's most likely not caused by a lack of hip rotation necessarily. It could be because when you don't rotate the hips, that's usually what happens when you early extend. So if you're not rotating the hips, you are most likely going to early extend, and that club drops from the inside. And you get that inside out path. That could be what's happening there, but I would have you to try and think more about what's happening at impact. That's usually what's going to help you the most. And then worry about the body stuff, which is going to be the Top Speed Golf system, and look at that first. And then, because most likely, like I said, you're just not, if you're thinking that you're not rotating your hips, and again, you got to film your swing on camera to see this, but it's going to be dropping to the inside when that happens. And that's most likely what's happening to you. And maybe it could be, if you do think about rotating the hips, that could help you to swing more down on path. But I don't know if that's for sure what's going to happen without seeing your swing. Marvin G says, I'm hitting 2 inches behind the ball. Am I leaving too far to the right? Am I leaning too far to the right? You'll have to look at your swing on camera, but if you're hitting behind the ball, it could be that you're hanging back too much. So I would look at your compression line. So if you're thinking about compression line, this is one of the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system, is that at impact, we want to have our lead ankle, our hip, and our shoulder all in a straight line and slightly angled away from the target. So when I say slightly angled away from the target, I'm talking like 2 or 3 degrees angled away. Because if you are like this, so this is like 6 to 8 degrees probably tilted away with our compression line, that I'm going to be hanging back too much, and that's probably going to make me hit behind the golf ball. And if I'm too much like this, I'm leaning toward the target, I'm going to be chopping down into the ball, maybe swinging over the top and things like that. So about a couple degrees angled away from the target is a good place to be. You might be hanging back a little bit too much with your compression line. So I'd take a look at your compression line, and I'd also check out our stop chunking and topping section. In the courses, click on the house icon, scroll down to see all the courses, and choose the stop chunking and topping section. Excuse me. Dave S. says, can you please discuss covering the ball on the full swing? I seem to be jamming up a bit on my full swing to complete the follow through. Thanks. So it sounds like you're probably chopping down into the ball. So some people say this in different and mean different things. But as far as I'm concerned, when you're talking about covering the ball, that's like the pet the grass drill. So that's like as you're coming into impact, this right hand is coming in and you feel like it's kind of covering the ball. My hand is covering the ball. What you see with most amateurs is that hand is like that. You've already released the club essentially, almost. If you look at most tour players, as they're coming into impact, they're getting forward shaft lean, and that right wrist is more like in that position. It's covering the ball. So that's the feeling that they have, is that they're coming in and they're covering the ball. If you are trying to cover the ball, what a lot of people do is they lean forward and they chop down into the ball. So if you're having trouble finishing your swing, it's probably because you're digging a trench with your club, and the club is interrupting or the ground is interrupting the path of your club coming through into the full finish. So I look at your compression line, and I try to feel like as you're coming through impact that you're covering the ball, but this shoulder is moving up and out of the way. Instead of going like this, it's moving up and out of the way. And it's allowing that club to work kind of up through there. to get that to even out. Because if I have the club and it's coming down like this, it's just, if I have it just on a pivot point here and it's just coming down, it's just chopping down into the ball. What you want to feel like is that it's pulling up. So that's kind of shallowing it up. And then you've probably seen some videos on the website where Clay talks about impact glide. And that's what's happening, is you want to get to where the club is being pulled up through there. And that's kind of shallowing it out a little bit so that you get that nice glide through the turf. And you're still getting that forward shaft lean as you're coming through there. So I would definitely take a look at your swing on camera, see if your compression line is good, because most likely you're probably leaning forward and kind of chopping down into the ball. And you'll want to work through that compression line section to get those hands working up and through to get that impact glide as you're coming through there. All right. Mike L says, Clay says to keep your glutes on the wall. Robin says they may restrict hip rotation. Do you have an opinion? So I'm assuming, so what's happening is that if you look at pretty much all tour players, what you're going to see is, if I get my backside, so if I'm at address here and I have my backside, let's say my backside's on the edge of this vent, right? I'm trying to get aligned with the camera. As you're going back in the backswing, your backside should, if you're drawing a line on your backside when you're looking from down the line, you should never see any light between your backside and that line. What I see with a lot of people is they do this. So they're kind of standing up out of it. So see, when I stand up, when my upper body moves away, my lower body moves toward the ball, and now my butt's coming off that line. So if you keep your butt on it like this and you get zero and you don't turn your hips and you just do this, well, yeah, you're not going to get any power because I'm only going to be able to turn my shoulders about this much. You have to rotate the hips. So what's happening is that I'm getting my backside on here, and I would try to feel like my right hip is on that, your back. You know, if you're right-handed, it's going to be maybe your right pocket or your right hip. It's on that line. And then as I'm coming into impact, same thing. Is that this is the most common thing that you see in amateurs, is in the downswing, the butt comes off there because we're not rotating, we're standing up as we're coming through and we're flipping through impact. So you got to get to where your backside is staying on that so that you can rotate into impact. So that's the most common thing. I'm guessing what you're talking about with Clay was probably taken a little bit out of context. You know, there is that the wall drill, and that's just to get you to feeling. It's a drill that helps you get the feeling of using your shoulders. That's not what we're trying to do on the swing. We're not trying to keep our butt flat up against the wall the entire time. That's just a drill to get you to feel the use of your shoulders only, and then you try to apply that with your swing where you're using your hips as well. Because a lot of people, they might just turn their hips and not turn their shoulders, or they'll just pick the club up like this. So that drill is to help you kind of feel the maximum separation that you're getting from your hips and your shoulders as you're going back. And he talks about that in the drill. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to keep our butt glued to a wall. As you're going back, you should feel like your right hip is up against the wall if you're right-handed. And then as you're coming into impact, your left hip is up against the wall as you're coming into impact there. So that's what you're going to be looking for there. Hopefully that cleared things up for you there. All right. Clay talks about pushing the ankle in the ground. Can you explain? To me, this implies rolling the foot over to touch the ankle bone to the ground, but I doubt that is the intent. So when he's talking about pushing the ankle in the ground, and there's actually a great video on this, just search kick the clutch. But essentially what he's talking about is pushing your foot into the ground, more or less. So as you're coming into impact, you want to be pushing into the ground so that you can turn your hip back, and that's going to turn the shoulders back. That's going to turn the handle up to get speed and to also level that out like we were talking about a second ago. So if you don't do that, what a lot of people do is they do this, and they flip the club. They don't rotate open. They just stand up out of the posture. They flip the club as they're coming through there. That adds loft. You're going to lose a lot of power and compression when you do that. What the other thing that he might be talking about is, if you look at most tour players are doing something with that left foot. So what you see with most tour players, it's basically coming up like this. So if you look at me, can't really see from this angle, like I'm not touching my ankle to the ground. But if you look at some players, I mean, Jordan Spieth, I mean, his ankle is like that. I don't know how he does that and not break his ankle or have a sore ankle all the time. But if I did that, I would have a sore ankle all the time. But basically, as I'm coming through impact, my leg it's kind of, if you look at the inside of my foot, it's kind of rolling up a little bit. So it's basically like that. And that's allowing me to come all the way through. If you don't do that, I mean, if I just keep my foot flat on the ground and I try, that's as far as I have terrible internal rotation on my hip. But basically, if I try to keep that foot square and not roll open at all, I can't really, that's as much as I can open up my body. I mean, I'm pushing as hard as I can. I'm feeling a lot of tightness right here in my hip. So what I got to do is I got to rotate that foot open a little bit. That's going to help me ease up my internal rotation. And then also as I'm coming through, my foot kind of rolls up a little bit to allow my hips to come all the way through and do a full finish. But you're going to see some people, I mean, look at Justin Thomas hit a driver. He's coming up, he's pushing into the ground so much that he's actually jumping off the ground. And then when he jumps off the ground, his foot actually does this. Watch Bubba Watson. His foot comes off the ground and it opens up. If you look at Patrick Reed, he's pushing into the ground. His foot actually goes like that. It steps backward and is opened up. It's pointing at the target as he's coming through impact. So you got to let that foot roll up. I think the easiest thing to do is set up with that foot open and let it kind of roll over like what I'm doing. That's kind of the most natural thing that you can do. If you have super strong legs and you're a very advanced player, you might be able to do exactly what we see Ricky Fowler, Justin Thomas, Bubba Watson, that these players do, that they're actually coming off the ground. You'll see a lot of long drive guys, they're coming off the ground, and that's opening up the leg as they come through there. But I would be working on first getting that foot to open up a little bit, set it up that way and address that first of all. And usually most people intuitively just kind of roll up on the foot as they're coming through there. But I wouldn't try to keep it planted on the ground. That's not going to help you to keep rotating through impact. I'd let that foot move. That's completely fine. James C says, with the video, the move, I seem to be topping a lot of shots when pushing down with my lead leg. Well, first of all, whenever you're working on changing something with your technique, you're typically going to hit the ball worse just because you don't know how to move that way and hit the ball. So the more comfortable you get with the movement, the better it's going to become. When you start getting more comfortable with it, the easier it's going to become to hit the ball. You're going to be training yourself how to hit the ball and perform this move at the same time. So keep that in mind. I wish it worked out that I could just tell you, oh, go work on the move for an hour. And now you're going to get forward shaft lean and you're going to be able to hit the ball miles and you're going to know how to hit the ball in the center of the club face every single time. But that's not the reality at all. So I keep that in mind for sure. And then if you're topping the ball, and like I said, it's all about adjusting your feeling to get the desired result that you want. So if you're topping the ball, you're hitting the ball on the very bottom part of the club face, I would try to hit the ball on the higher part of the club face. I would almost try to chunk a shot and see what happens. See if you get a better contact when you try to chunk the ball. So keep that in mind when you're working on things. Just adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. But if you're just still working on getting that motion, don't care about where the golf ball goes right now. Just get comfortable with the golf ball being there and hitting the ball. And then over time, as you continue to work on it, you're going to get more and more comfortable with it. Now, just as an added point to that, you don't, just because you're working on something and practicing something doesn't mean you're ready to take it to the course yet. It doesn't mean that you can't play golf when you're working on things. So when you go and play golf, you just got to be comfortable out there with the swing that you have and just hope that subconsciously, whatever you're working on in your practice, it's going to make its way into your swing. So just go out there, swing comfortably the way that with a confident swing, and just focus on hitting the ball well and not trying to perform the move. When you're practicing and you're trying to perform the move or whatever different kind of thing, really focus on the move itself and then get more comfortable with hitting the ball as you work on it. So hopefully that helps you understand exactly that's what swing changes. That's what it is. Like I said, I wish it would work out that I could just tell you what to do and you just go do it and everyone would be really good at golf. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. Mauricio says, starting the downswing with squatting for more power should be done before rotating the hips or at the same time. Great question. So this can be done. What you're going to see with most tour players is you're going to see, especially the best ball strikers, is you're going to see in the backswing, they are lowering a little bit. So it's a little bit of squatting. It's usually about 1 to 3 inches. You see, if you draw a line on top of their head, you're going to see as they go to the top, that head is lowering a little bit. So let me actually, we'll erase this. And I'll kind of try and simulate this on here. So I'm going to try and draw like a heavy line on here and see. I don't know if any of these are. Hopefully you guys can see this line on here. All right. Oh yeah, you can see that very easily. All right. So essentially, if I'm standing right here, let me get a little bit closer. There we go. I'm trying to get lined up with the camera here. So here I am at address. All right. My head is, this is the top of my head on the line. And then as they're going down the downswing, in the backswing, sorry, their head will lower 1 to 3 inches. So they're going to be about right there. And then as they start the downswing, they'll even lower a little bit more. And then about when those hands get to about waist level, they'll typically level out. They won't get any lower. They won't get any higher. They'll pretty much go level all the way into impact. And then they won't start to come up until the hands are basically in front of the chest here. And then they'll start to come up and they'll be above that line as they're coming through there. So that squatting, what you're feeling as you're loading up into the ground, is you should feel like you're lowering a little bit as you're going up the top. As you're loading up, you are lowering a little bit. And then the downswing, you're lowering a little bit more. And then you're level into impact. So basically you're coming down, you're getting down to the lowest point. And then from here, you're really pushing that club through there. So what's good about that is if I'm right here, if my hands are right here at impact, let me lower this down so you can kind of see. So my hands, if I'm flipping, my hands are high, right? They're right here. So this is me at impact. This is flipping, no forward shaft lean. My hands are high. I haven't lowered my hands at all. But if I lower my hands, I have to press the club forward. I have to have forward shaft lean. Otherwise, if I don't, that club's in the ground back here. If I don't have forward shaft lean, I'm sticking the club in the ground. What I have to have is forward shaft lean with my hands lower as I'm coming through there. So that's why you see that squat move, is because they're getting those hands lower as they come into impact so they can get forward shaft lean at impact. So I would be focusing on trying to get a little bit lower in the backswing and a little bit lower in the downswing. You're going to see this to varying degrees with some tour players. Justin Thomas probably has the most range of motion. I mean, he is 6 inches lower than what he started at address. So you're always going to see tour players getting a little bit lower. You're never going to see a tour player. I shouldn't say never. I think Kenny Perry does a little bit, but you're very rarely going to see a tour player that actually gets above that line or is even close to that line. Almost all tour players are getting lower below that line as they go to the top. And because if you're going up to the top and I'm trying to get forward shaft lean and I'm up here, I've got to come way down to get 6 inches lower to the ground. It's just so much squatting down into the ball. So what a lot of times you see is a little bit in the backswing, then a little bit in the downswing, then leveled out. That's almost always what you see there. So that's why I'd be taking a look on camera and seeing if that is the case. Now, keep in mind, if you're someone who kind of slides off the ball, if you're someone who slides off the ball, if you have the camera shooting at me from this way, and I'm looking from down the line, I'm not going to change my level. I'm just going to slide off the ball. It looks like I got higher, right? That's not what's happening. I didn't change my level. I'm just going like this. So keep in mind that if you're someone who slides off the golf ball, it's going to look like you're raising up, when in reality, you're probably staying pretty level, depending on what you're seeing. So that's why you got to shoot video from face on and down the line, so you get the whole picture there. I like to look at it from face on, head level. That's really what I like to look at, because it really gives you the whole story of what's going on. Because in the downswing, it's going to look like they're lowering a lot more than what they are, but in the reality, they're just moving away from the camera. So you can see I'm moving away from the camera here. I haven't changed my level at all, but it looks like I've dropped down an inch. but I'm still at the same level that I was. My eyes are at the same level. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your swing. When you're looking at head leveling, try to look at from face-on view. All right. Timothy Q says, what are the best footwork drills? Not really sure. Well, if you're talking about weight shift as far as footwork is concerned, there's a great drill. It's called the step drill. If you search on the website, downswing, it's the third video down. Use the search engine. Not sure if I mentioned the search engine on the website, but it works really, really well. Up in the upper right-hand corner of about any page on the website, there's a search window, and it says search the website. Put in any keyword search in there, and you'll find a ton of videos on it. For instance, if you're looking for videos on, someone mentioned earlier that their head is moving too much, you can search head on there, and it will give you a bunch of moves. There's actually a crazy detail video that talks about how it's okay for your head to be moving around. So I would check out that video. But as far as, if you're looking for it, you could be looking at footwork. I don't know if we'd have anything that would necessarily be specifically on footwork. I can actually do a quick search on here and see if we would find anything. So let me look that up really quick. But you're going to want to look at a downswing video. So search downswing. That's going to be where the drill that I'm thinking of. It's going to be the third video down. It says how to start the downswing correctly, I think it says. And in the thumbnail, it's going to say downswing in yellow letters. That's the one that you want. So I just searched footwork. It looks like there's some you could be looking at some good videos in here as well. So golf swing footwork. Have you been told the wrong information? Learn proper golf footwork. So I'll definitely take out those. Search footwork as well. You can probably find some adequate videos for you. I'm not familiar with the drills in those videos, but I know that step drill is really good for getting the right feeling of getting to your lead side and opening up as you're coming into impact. Russell says, yes, hitting off a non-turf surface over time can ingrain some undesirable impact results. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but thanks for sharing, Russell. It just depends. Like, you can get comfortable. The thing about hitting off of a mat is that it can kind of lie to you a little bit. If you're hitting slightly behind the ball 1 inch, you're probably not going to know unless you have a really, really great feel for your impact. Like, basically, unless you're a tour player or a scratch golfer, you're most likely not going to be able to have the feel to know that you're hitting behind the ball that much. So it's going to kind of give you that false sense of security that you're hitting the ball really, really well, when in reality, you're hitting behind the ball 1 inch. So, there's some things like divots and things like that. Unfortunately, it's hard. It's near impossible to work on that on a flat surface like basically like a mat or something like that. I mean, ideally, it'd be much better to hit off a turf, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to make you ingrain any bad habits. The swing technique that you would use would be the same as you would, if you were hitting off of turf. All right. So James M says, where is the right place in the downswing to twist your wrist to close the face before the release? So that'd be in the transition. So we talk about the tennis racket drill. That's in the move. That's 1.3 from the move. So as you're going up to the top here, you want to have a nice flat wrist. It can be whatever, but just keep in mind, if you have a cupped wrist like this, you're going to have to do a lot more movement to get that club face to square up. So ideally, if you have a cupped wrist like this and you're squaring up that club face at impact and de-lofting the face, then heck yeah, that's awesome. Freddie Couples did it, and he did it for a long time and won a lot of money on tour doing it, but it's just a lot harder to do it. But if you are doing it, that's completely fine. So what you want to feel like, nice flat wrist, or even slightly bowed at the top is good, but nice flat wrist here, and then it's squaring. It's as you're coming down in transition, at this point, it's squaring up. And the tennis racket drill is going to be where you're going to be feeling that. There's also another drill called face rotation. On face rotation, I would check out that. But the tennis racket drill, I think that's the best time. Honestly, it doesn't really matter where you do it. It's just as long as that club face is square at impact and you have forward shaft lean. If you wait too late, you're typically going to square up the face by flipping through. It's just going to be, there's not going to be enough time. So I would try to do it at the slower point in the swing right here. A lot of people ask me about doing it in the backswing, like kind of like Dustin Johnson is, John Ram, and things like that. Sure, you can absolutely do that, but it's very, very difficult to do that. And the reason is when you are, for every action, you probably understand, the laws of, Newton's laws. Basically, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, it's like in the backswing. For every action in the backswing, a lot of times there's an equal and opposite reaction in the downswing. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. So if you are bringing the club back and you're bowing that wrist as you're going up to the top, a lot of times in the downswing, you're going to let it go and you're going to go like that. So what I like to feel like is that you're nice and flat, and then it's squaring up in the downswing, and you're getting that happen into impact. Unlike, that's not what Dustin Johnson, John Ram, Daniel Berger, that's not what they do, but they've trained to be able to do it in this way. Now, if you're able to do it in this way and keep it that way all the way down into impact, then that's awesome. That's exactly what you should be doing, but it's a very, very difficult thing to do. I've tried it. I have had no luck with it. So I would recommend doing it kind of the way that we talk about in the move section. All right, I got a few minutes here. DMP, he says, what is the main cause of pulling shots, mainly with irons, and the correction for this problem? The main cause of pulling shots is a closed club face and a path that is out to in. It's not, I know it's not a slice, but if you go to our Never Slice Again section, all of those videos are to help you get this club working from the inside more. And that's going to help you to swing more inside out. And that's going to get rid of the pull. Like I said, the best way to get rid of a ball flight is to exaggerate the opposite ball flight. So what would be the opposite ball flight of a pull? That'd be a push or a block out to the right. Get to where you're swinging into out with the club face that's open. And then all you have to do at that point is just ease off of it. And then to get the straight ball flight. So that's going to be the main thing to fix that, is to get to where you're swinging from the inside. I'll answer a few more questions here. Hi, Joseph D says, hi, I'm recovering from left ankle reconstruction. I have limited movement. Any suggestions? There's not, unfortunately, whenever you're coming back from something, you can't really expect to have you can only do what you're capable of doing. So what I would suggest, to ease up on your ankle a little bit, any torsion or anything like that, would be to open that up. So if you're a right-handed golfer, I would try to open this up at address to ease up on that. Because if you keep it square, sure, this is more aesthetically pleasing. This is what Rory McIlroy does, right? But if you keep it that way, when I'm turning into impact, man, I'm going to be turning on my ankle quite a bit. So if I open that up, that's going to make things a little bit easier for me to get through the ball. Now, I've had a lot of people that tell me, okay, well, what about the backswing? Isn't that going to be pulling on the backswing? Yes, it can. If you keep this planted on the ground, it can certainly make it difficult for you to turn in the backswing. That's why I would recommend lifting that heel off the ground. So when you're going in the backswing to ease up, so maybe you can see it a little bit from this angle. If I'm going up, I'm lifting that off the ground. You can see that my ankle is lifting up here. You're lifting that off the ground to allow your hips to free up. And then when you put it back on the ground, you can kind of open it up a little bit as you're coming through. And so I'm lifting up and then I'm opening it up to allow my hips to get through a little bit easier and take the pressure off your ankle a little bit. That'd be my best suggestion. But unfortunately, if you have ankle issues, it's just going to be more difficult to do things. You can only do things that you're capable of. So keep in mind that it might be a little bit harder to get through the ball if you have a limitation there. All right, so Matthew B here. This is going to be the last question of the day. I'll answer Matthew B's question. I'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp, so hopefully you can join me. But this will be the last question here. Matthew B says, I'm creating unwanted lag in my putting, almost a rebound effect, when transitioning to my forward stroke. What can I do to fix this? So I would try to break it down. One thing that's really, really good for putting is doing one-hand strokes. So usually, this is not a very common thing that I hear as far as going like that. But ideally, your wrist would be locked pretty solid. So one, I would just be trying to concentrate on keeping those wrists rock solid, because that's what's creating the lag is the wrist movement. So I would just focus one to make it a little bit easier, just to focus on those wrists being rock solid, and it's just the shoulder movement. So if you were to put your hands together like this, like you're praying, I would just go like that, back and forth. That's the feeling that you want to have in the putting stroke, and your wrists are staying dead locked straight. So I'd see if that works. If you're still kind of getting that lag in there, then you want to break it down and see which wrist is causing the issue. So I would do some one arm strokes where to see which one's wanting to do it. Are you doing this with your right wrist, or are you doing it with your left wrist? So I do some one hand. You can hit the ball when you do these. It's really, really good to be able to do that. I'll do some left-handed ones, see what's going on there, and see if you can get both of them to be flat individually, then put them together and do some rock solid wrist strokes when you're doing that. That's what I would recommend checking out. Again, we have our Toss Golf putting system, so I check that out as well to help with that. So if you have any questions or anything, join me tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you're interested in swing reviews, go to our swing review page, get a review, join my waiting list if you would. And if there's other instructors too, if you'd like to join them on their swing reviews, we're all TSG certified instructors. So we all can help you with whatever issues you got. So hopefully y'all have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.